glad it was not coming on.
No John DeRoss or Joe. It's important to not have heads that go like this, because then I'm doing it all. Yeah, exactly.
Denise, you look great on the big screen.
Good.
We can go, I can play with it. And start.
Happy New Year to all,
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
and I'd like to call to order the Winthrop Town Council meeting for January 7th, 2025. We are in the Harvey Hearing Room. It's currently 6:30, and I will ask for a roll call, please.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Counsel Tassaneri.
Here.
Counsel Costigan.
Here.
Counsel Munson.
Here.
Counsel DeMarco.
Here.
Counsel Aiello. Counsel Swope. Here. Counsel DeRoss. Vice President Belcher. Here. President Letterie.
Yeah. Motion, quorum is present. I ask everyone to please rise for the pledge and remain standing after the pledge. Councilor DeMarco.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And please remain standing. I'd like to ask for a moment of silence first for the 14 innocent victims of the horrific New Orleans incident on New Year's Day. Also for the 39th President of the United States, Jimmy Carter, who promoted peace and liberal values during his presidency and advocated for the poor, for democracy, and for human rights in his post-presidency. He was truly a remarkable man. Also, I would like us to remember the life of Mary Jane Mahoney. Mary was the ma of 7, including 3 Winthrop police officers, including the late Officer Michael Delahanty, Sergeant Sean Delahanty, and former town manager, as well as former Chief Terry Delahanty. Mary's other children included Kevin, Noreen, Brian, and the late Maureen. Mary had a joyous, purposeful life and will be remembered for her kindness, her laugh, and her twinkling Irish eyes. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. Minutes from the 7/17 meeting have been circulated. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Vice President Belcher, second by Councilor DeMarco. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. We'll have our first round of, no, we won't. Not yet. I'm going to do the annual State of the Town address. To the citizens of Winthrop, as outlined in the Winthrop Town Charter, it is both the responsibility and privilege of the council president to address the town each year. This address serves as an opportunity to reflect on the past 12 months and clearly define our goals for the next year ahead. I want to begin by expressing my heartfelt gratitude to our town manager, Tony Marino, our council clerk, Denise Quist, and all our department heads, their staff members, and our appointed boards and committees. Our town would not function without their dedication and hard work. They ensure our safety, educate our children and grandchildren, maintain the cleanliness and beauty of our community, and create welcoming parks and recreational spaces. They also care for our infrastructure and streetscapes. In short, they play a crucial role in shaping a community that I am deeply proud I'm grateful for and honored to call home. One could not share a reflection on calendar 2024 without mentioning MBTA 3A zoning. It was an issue which basically was all-consuming and monopolized the conversation for every month of the year. The planning board was tasked with an almost impossible request. And after an incredible amount of work on their part, they presented a plan which, after recognizing the offset units from prior zoning in the CBD, enabled the town to create a new zoning districts, one being Sail Harbor and Fort Heath, while the other being Governor's Park. With their diligence, they offered up a plan to comply with an extremely controversial law without potentially any increased units. Citizens of this great town came out in force to share their opinions, both pro and against. And ultimately, the council, along with 31 other municipalities in the Commonwealth, rejected complying with the controversial law. It is probably a good assumption to stay tuned for more information on 3A as 2025 progresses. A few other items we were able to complete included settling a fire union contract, which will run through June 30th, 2027. This new contract included a paramedic pay scale and monies available to pay for paramedic training and certification for interested firefighters. The long-term benefits of this addition is that we will have paramedics available when we are ready to offer ambulance service to supplement that service offered by Action Ambulance, with the goal being to provide more ambulance service to the residents of Winthrop while reducing the wait times. We hired a new finance director, Sarah Johnson, to facilitate our CFO, who has taken on more responsibilities as the school business manager. Sarah has been a tremendous addition to the team, incredibly knowledgeable and so pleasant to work with. After a long search, we hired an assistant town manager focused on planning and economic development to replace our planning director. We are very happy to have Cheryl McCormick on board and look forward to collaborating with her for years to come. We also adopted new floodplain regulations required by federal and state governments that allow Winthrop residents to buy flood insurance through federal programs. Town Council approved electric irrigation and moved forward with Direct Energy as our supplier beginning this month. 2 new appointments to the police department, including the naming of John Goodwin as our newest police chief, along with Steve Rogers replacing John's vacant deputy chief's slot. Both John and Steve are incredibly diligent, hard workers, and we are very happy with them both. The chief position became available after our beloved former chief, Terry Delahanty, stepped down as chief. Terry's unbelievable passion, love, commitment, and dedication to this town, which he loves so much, will be sorely missed, and we wish him all the best. Lastly, in recognition of 2024, I would like to discuss the school override along with much overdue potential new firehouse. First, on the firehouse, we put a question for a debt exclusion on a ballot in November of 2023, which did not pass, but we learned a great deal. We learned that the town seems to agree that there is no question that Winthrop needs a new fire station. Our citizens understand that our firefighters need a facility that offers them a healthy environment, provides them training facilities, adequate and proper shower facilities, decontamination rooms, proper facilities for both men and women, as well as other state-of-the-art items. We understood that although it seems the citizens are united on the need, they were not convinced on the cost nor the location. We listened, we have made adjustments on both cost and location, and the council voted unanimously to put a new firehouse on the ballot this spring with a new location and a $5 million reduction in cost, without sacrificing any part of the facility. We are very optimistic that we can finally support our firefighters that put their lives on the line for us with a much-needed new firehouse. The school requested an override be put on this past November's ballot to help supplement their future budget to maintain the great strides which have been made over the past several years. Unfortunately, it did not pass. However, the need is very much there. And the schools also listen to the citizens and are coming back with a similar request, however, adding an option for a reduced amount. Most municipalities in the Commonwealth request overrides on a 4 to 7 year cycle to help maintain with unfunded mandates imposed by the state, along with the increased cost of providing a highly competitive education for our children and grandchildren. The Winthrop school system was somehow incredibly able to go 15 years without going to the citizens for that request. They certainly understand the limits of our tax base, which shows the severe need which they are in. We are hopeful that our citizens will get involved, ask questions, go to meetings, learn about specifics, and support our children as well as our hero firefighters. I myself will be holding weekly meetings to help provide questions to the public, to help provide answers to questions to the public, and I am sure that the superintendent and fire chief will be alongside to share their knowledge as well. In 2025, as we enter the 20-year mark of our form of government, I've come to realize that being president requires and deserves a full-time commitment to ensure that our citizens are given every opportunity to see transparency in government, to have peace of mind, and to continue to be proud and blessed to be a citizen of Winthrop. We as a council have made a commitment to continue the process of addressing the flooding issues at Girdlestone, Tileston, and Pico. We will continue to find the right solutions to help the residents of Morton, Banks, and the surrounding streets to remedy the flooding issues. We will work towards a solution with the old middle school site, and in fact, we'll be holding a special roundtable meeting next Tuesday to continue discussions. I sincerely hope and expect that this council is willing to put in the extra time and effort to ensure we keep Winthrop moving forward, that we maintain Winthrop's small-town feel, that we keep Winthrop as least congested as possible, that we keep Winthrop unique, that we keep Winthrop's values, that we keep Winthrop special, and that we keep the state of our town strong. Thank you, and God bless our town. Okay. Now, Denise, are we set for the,
Yep. And Mary and Jenna.
Mary and,
Mary Arcadia.
yes.
Dottie.
So we are pleased now to have Mary from the Collins Center present the classification and compensation study. This has been much anticipated. It has been a while, and we look forward to the presentation. Mary, welcome, and Happy New Year.
Thank you so much. Happy New Year to you all. We're so happy to be here. I want to introduce Deborah Molly, who really is the backbone of this project. She and Dave Colton did the bulk of the work. I'm happy to be here to present the report here. My assumption is that you took the report, so I'm not going to bore you by reading the report or showing every page of it. The type of page is small. And Jen is really
thank you so much for the presentation. Before I ask for questions, is this available online on our website, Denise?
It will be.
It will be.
It will be, yep.
We want to wait till the council's on
Yep.
first.
Okay, so this will be on the website as of tomorrow. Questions from the council? Council Munson?
Thank you for the presentation. I appreciate it. We've been looking forward to it for a while. I'm trying to read the summary of salary survey, and there's the fourth and fifth column are the exact same words as the seventh and eighth column. Survey average minimum, survey median minimum, and then the same thing repeated. Can you explain the difference?
Sure, I'm hoping that your last two columns say maximum and the first two say minimum.
Okay, yeah, they do. But I'm still trying to understand, so where's the source of the data for the, is one Winthrop and one the larger community, or?
Oh, okay, certainly, when you see the first column shows, if you go across the columns, you see the first, well, the third column in is Winthrop's minimum rate. Correct?
Yes, that's correct. And then the
Okay.
fourth,
So then
fifth,
the next two are the survey, the 15 towns, averages and medians minimum.
okay,
So we, data, so that's the survey, so
Okay.
you can compare your minimum to the survey minimum. The next three columns do the same thing with the maximum.
I see.
What is interesting, and this is why I mentioned, in your maximum column, you'll see in your minimum, there's blanks. That's because your maximum for the non-union positions that don't have pay ranges is their actual pay.
Okay.
It's not their maximum or their minimum, it's both. So that can skew the data as well. So when you see the Winthrop maximum, that's either the maximum or the actual. So if you see the blank in the minimum, that means that that one is the actual pay somebody is earning.
So-
And then that you can see relative to the market. So if you, maybe we should say the market average minimum rather than survey. You know, that, you bring up a good point, and I'm making a mental note to do that in a future report.
Gotcha.
Because that adds the survey average maximum and median maximum is really the market, the labor market average and median. So that shows you where you are relative to that. So what you see is, in many instances, and it's deceiving because you do not have pay ranges for many of your positions, we typically would run the analysis and show the analysis of how
I noticed that on this survey, on this report, there was no actual, like, you're not pointing out the outliers. You're giving us the data to analyze and come to our own conclusions of who's overpaid, who's underpaid, so to speak, correct?
Correct. We did provide some backup spreadsheets, which are not in here, that show, but we evaluate ranges, not actual pay. So when you see the analysis on those who don't have a range, you can see where they fall. But my example of the clerk and the council on aging, that's 1736 to 2258, I don't know what that person actually is paid. They could be paid 2258, which is in the market. So we are evaluating your ranges, not your individuals.
And if you don't have a minimum, then that is actually the pay rate.
That is exactly. So for those that don't have a minimum, let me just pick on the deputy assessor. We may as well, it's all public information. The actual rate is $55 an hour. That is above the minimum of the survey and below the maximum of the survey. So that says to us, that person is paid within the market. Now, interestingly enough, if that's a 35-year employee and they're not closer to the maximum, that might be a policy decision you need to look at. So if you take another example, and I know I'm gonna get myself in the soup here, let me see, your operations manager in the DPW currently is paid $50.54. That's below the maximum and really at the minimum. Now, you can see in that, though, the average for that position minimum is 50.51. When you see more of a dollar or two difference, so the median is 53, if you see a $2 or more difference because you multiply that times 2,080 hours, that's not nothing. You can say, oh, it's only $2, but at 2,000 hours, that's quite a bit. But you see that $2 difference between the average and the median, that means there's an outlier. And that's why in the report, we have a table that says reasons for differences. There may be a different definition of an operations manager in one of these other municipalities. So this is an art, we use a lot of math, we use a lot of formulas, but you really have to dive deep a little bit to make sure you're comparing an apple to an apple. When another example, when we see that happen, is a great example is, wow, if you look at highway superintendent, you can see there's differences in the role of a superintendent. Some places that's a DPW worker. Some places it's a highway division superintendent. So that's something that we try to catch when we do the work. So that's why we don't do an exact person for person evaluation. And the most important thing is, it's not about how does the individual title compare to the market, it's how is the group. So if we said, these department heads should all be in, we gave them recommended grades, you can see in the chart within the report, the groupings. So we use all the data for those titles to come up with the ranges.
This should have been executive session, I think this should have been.
It's all conversation.
And I don't want to get too much into the weeds on this. I will get to you in 1 second. And, you just mentioned, if it was a 35-year employee, and that stuff isn't in here, if they're one-year employees. And you give Winthrop's minimum, you don't give other individual towns minimum, you just give an average. And it would be better for us to compare like communities with a minimum, to show you could show the average, but to show each community's minimum, because that's extremely important also. I don't want to get too much into the weeds on this, and it's going to be online.
I will tell you, the town has all of that data.
Okay. Counselor Swope.
Yeah, the question I have is always, these are salaries, right? They're just salaries that you're looking on, not healthcare benefits or other benefits, is that correct? Because
Correct.
one of the things that we pride ourselves on in Winthrop is our healthcare benefits are much higher than in many other communities. So we're paying a larger portion of healthcare than in many instances. So, I mean, we've talked about this in the school committee too. So often, when that's not included, and it's not a part of these issues, it looks as if we're lower than in many communities. So I point that out because healthcare benefits are expensive.
Yeah.
That's
They-
an excellent point, and, that is not part of this project, which is also where we end every report with, you need to make policy decisions. So if you find, we're looking at what the recruitment and the wages are, so if somebody, those are all kind of personal decisions, people take a job, leave a job, include the benefits, so that may be a reason to evaluate the sample schedule we gave you to say, okay, this is based on the standard benefits across these municipalities. We're gonna start it a little differently. Those are absolutely factors that you should take into consideration when you evaluate what ranges you're gonna put in place.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Counselor DeMarco.
Mary, thanks for that presentation. That was very in-depth, and I really appreciate the methodology. The question I have is, as a talent acquisition manager, for the most part of my career over the last 20 years, is I've seen that the pay scale between genders has been mostly the difference becomes at the beginning of the career. So, like, for example, somebody who applied for a job in 2006, depending on their gender, might get a different rate than somebody of another gender. And then that stays with them throughout their career. So, like, they get a pay increase of $3,000, $4,000, but that initial mistake, is what I will say, stays with them throughout their career. What corrective measures are we taking to address that? Any?
8-year-old, not like a baby?
Thanks, Caitlin.
I love that. This is why we love Zoom as well.
I think you got what I was trying to say, so I'll let you take it from there.
I do, and that's my point, quite frankly, on, calling out the Council on Aging and the pay equity and the historical, because if you just perpetuate by giving a percentage increase to everybody, you're perpetuating the inequity. So a project like this, what you will find when you go to implement any recommendation, and I'm sure the town is already doing some of those numbers, some of those historically low, it will take them more to get to the minimum. So at least you're gonna be in the same range, that's correct. But it's gonna be a bigger equity adjustment so if you fall within the range, say the range we recommend is $30 to $50 and you make $35, you're falling within the range. But if you're historically underpaid and you're at $25 an hour, we would recommend you get that $5 an hour raise to get you at least to the minimum. So that's where we can address some of those historically inequitable positions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, again, thank you so much for your time and effort. It's very much appreciated, and this will be up on the town's website.
Council President, no public questions?
No. But there's public comment coming up.
Well, I would like to hear from her, but okay.
Thank you.
Are we done?
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Something I'm like, wait, am I hanging on? Have a great evening, Happy New Year to
You as
all.
well.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
If you don't have any questions.
Thank you so much. There's a public hearing that the town council appropriate $30,000 from retained earnings in the Rink Enterprise Fund, extraordinary maintenance and repairs. Public hearing is open. Vice President Belcher.
Thank you. This motion came from the town manager about appropriating money from the retained earnings in the Rink Enterprise Fund in the amount of $30,000 for extraordinary repairs and maintenance. These were for 3 repairs, an overhaul in the main compressor, a rebuild of the secondary motor, and the replacement of the glycol pump motor. These are not annual repairs. It's nothing that could have been planned for. And this would leave their retained earnings, if the motion is approved, at $101,750.
So these are extraordinary repairs that were done at the rink in preparation for the season. They have roughly $130,000 in retained earnings now. This would come out of that. I believe that there was a finance committee earlier.
Yep, and it came out with a positive recommendation.
Okay. Is there anyone that would like to be heard in favor of this? Anyone who would like to be heard in opposition of this? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing and we will refer to this back in old business. Public comment. It's not gonna be that easy. Mr. Dowd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just very briefly, Mr. Munson and Mr. Aiello, at the last town council meeting, said there was a survey on the property at the middle school site. I asked them to present the survey that they mentioned to the town or to the town council. And that it's not on the agenda, so I'm thinking there is no survey. The other thing was the mitigation dealings with Massport. I guess Mass Water Resource may or may not be spoken about tonight. But from the very first meeting that they had with the intergovernmental board, or whatever it is, intergovernmental strategic committee, I suggested that they hire an independent firm or person to do the mitigation process. I don't think, a 40, and I heard the numbers from somebody that knows better. It could be a $40 or $50 million negotiations, depending on the terms that we go by. And so I think that there should be professional people involved that have done this before. And I requested that you put out a request for interest in doing these negotiations. I Googled it a few times, and there's many, many firms and people that have done this type of mitigating over a long period of time. I don't think, and I don't know about anybody's qualifications in this building or this room or right now or otherwise, but if you put out a request for interest, you may find out more than what you know about. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I can't stand.
That's fine.
Okay. John Stanley from Precinct 6, and I want to speak to the agenda item about the ballot, separate ballots for the firehouse and a separate ballot for the school override. I think that the override questions for the schools and the firehouse must be on one ballot and on one day, and preferably that day would be in the early spring. This constant implication that the voters didn't know what they were doing on the ballot, or that the ballot was too confusing, is not true. We clearly understood the ballot and we understood the results. This erroneous trope about uneducated Winthrop voters needs to stop immediately. It's divisive. And the town council and the schools should stop their divisive posturing. It's insulting. After a recent election, a national reporter stated that the results of the election were a consequence of uneducated voters. This again was insulting, and the reporter was reviled. Yet Winthrop elected officials picked it up in a heartbeat. When we plan our own personal financial decisions, we do so with all the information available to us. We don't make a major decision at one time and then another one in a vacuum. This makes no sense. Also, you, as a council, are responsible for town expenses. 2 separate elections is spending money foolishly. 1 ballot for both questions, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Marcy.
Hi, Marcy Hamilton, Precinct 2. I would like an update. I believe Mr. Keller spoke at the last meeting that there was information coming about the work done on Tileston and Girlstone. The engineering piece is moving forward, and if we could get that on the ballot, on the agenda, that would be greatly appreciated in the coming months. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Todd Sagal, Precinct 2. I guess I want to dovetail off on Mrs. Swope's astute comments about not factoring in benefits in this analysis. I hope we didn't pay for that. I feel like that was a giant waste of time and probably money too. A couple things on the differences in wages. I'd love to know how this firm factored in the disparities or differences in contract requirements. For instance, in municipalities like Everett and Malden, there's a requirement for the teachers to stay after school for extra help. There's no such requirement here in Winthrop. Town hall's closed on Fridays. How did that get factored into this analysis? I'm sure it wasn't. So this is garbage in, garbage out analysis. Like I said, I hope we didn't pay for it. And I hope you won't take any of their advice. Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Howard.
Howard, Precinct, I'm not sure.
2.
Precinct 2. Just to correct the record, and I respect Mr. Sacco's statement and opinion, but the teacher's contract does have a clause in it that teachers do have to stay after students are dismissed from school. So I just want to make sure that's clear to council.
Sorry, when I served, it wasn't that way, my man.
No,
It
it's
was
okay.
not that way.
No disrespect, just correcting the record.
Perfect.
Anybody on Zoom? Yes. Let's go to Zoom first, and we'll come back.
Shannon Poulos?
Hi, Shannon Poulos, Precinct 3. I'll make my comments brief. I just want to make it very clear, I'm in complete support of the 2.5 override for the schools, as well as the debt exclusion for the new firehouse. I'm not a politician, I'm not a political strategist, so I have my own personal views on how I think that this vote should go to the people. That might be counter to what might be best to make certain initiatives be successful. I do think that I agree with one of the comments that the prior person said, that I think we should respect our citizens, respect our taxpayers, and not dismiss the fact that they are aware of what's going on and how ultimately this all hits their pocketbook. I do think, though, by suggesting that the override for the schools only impacts the schools, I think is really something that hopefully people are educated on and really understand that that's not actually the case. Because the reality is that when it comes budget time and it comes times to appropriate money to the school budget, and if the override doesn't pass, there's no way that town is not going to be able to allocate at least some additional resources to the school to compensate for some of that shortfall. There's just no way that can happen. And so, where does that come from? Well, it comes from, I'm an accountant, it's a debit and credit. Like we always say in the finance committee, like if you say something's gonna go to one place, it has to come from another. So there will be impact on other parts of the community, whether it's DPW or police or fire or library or wherever it might be. And so I guess my point is that I hope that as part of the narrative to get the
Shannon. One more, yes.
Denise Kress, can you unmute? I'm gonna go to Karen. Karen's on. Karen Chavez?
Am I unmuted?
Okay, you unmuted?
Karen Chavez, precinct 2. I have to, not agree with the people that did not know what they were voting for or what the ballot was all about on election day. Having personally been there from 7 o'clock in the morning until closing at 8 o'clock that night and even afterwards, people understood that. They knew what they were doing. They knew what they were voting for. As far as it being at the very end of the ballot, if people had questions on it, they certainly could have asked any one of the people that worked in my precinct. I had 7 people working, all were well informed, and how to instruct people to go to find the answers that they wanted. So again, to say that people just didn't get to that question or they didn't understand that question, as far as the 2.5 override is concerned, I respectfully have to disagree with that. I also would like to say, I do not believe we should have 2 elections. I do believe that 1 election is enough. The people in this town will decide what they want and what they don't want.
Thank you, Karen. Was there one more?
Denise Kress? Can you unmute?
I know what she's talking about. We spoke earlier today. She was asking about the sandbags, I believe, and the Morton Street update. Okay.
All right, well, if she wants to come back, she's the only
Okay,
one.
we'll come back to the in-house if there's anybody else. There'll be one more round of public comment after. Okay. Correspondence, Denise?
I had one correspondence I, for, and approval of the school vote, 215 residents had signed it. I can put that, that will be on the, in the record on in the minutes.
Thank you. Committee reports, Vice President Belcher, Finance.
Finance met before the meeting this evening to go over the $30,000 motion for repairs to the rink. Again, they are not typical repairs. Sorry, I'm just trying to pull up my notes. One was for the overhaul of the main compressor, a rebuild of the secondary motor, and replacement of the glycol pump motor, and those came out with, and this motion came out with a positive recommendation.
Okay. And rules.
Rules and Ordinance attempted to have a meeting a couple weeks ago, but there was not a quorum, so we couldn't meet. We'll be scheduling that shortly to go over a couple updates to the tree ordinance, and hopefully we will have back from the planning board their updates and questions on the short-term rental ordinance as well.
All right. School Department report, the school committee met last evening. The topic mainly surrounded the override, and school department is trying to work overtime here to get a question prepared for the council. The council feels that, you know, the question should come from the schools. They should have the most input on it. It affects them the most, even though it does affect the whole town. So the school committee is having a subcommittee meeting, I believe, tomorrow, which will discuss questions and options. One of the advantages, not in terms of yes or no, just advantage of having a local election on an issue like this is you have more flexibility to be able to describe to the residents and the electorate what they're actually voting for, the consequences of a yes, the consequences of a no. So there will be a subcommittee meeting tomorrow, and my understanding is there will probably be a special school committee meeting next week, with the sole discussion point being a resolution on what the school committee would request or for a question on a override. So that was discussed last night. The other, I'll name 2 enjoyable moments of the evening. Well, one wasn't mentioned, but I realized it after, but Two incredible accomplishments by two of our student athletes, one by Talia Martucci on the girls hockey team, and one by Philly Boncory on the boys hockey team. They both achieved their 100th point over their careers. It's an incredible accomplishment, and congratulations to them both. And that is it. Town manager's report has been circulated. If you want to pick up on some highlights or discuss this.
A couple of things that come up in public comment. I mean, that was bullet number one in my town manager report. I mean, that's something we'll have to get the message out. Ms. Poulos, brought it up, but absolutely, if the override doesn't pass, it will be a town-wide cut, and not only schools, but town as well. Superintendent Howard and I will sit down in the coming weeks after all my department budgets are in and take a look at what the budget looks like without an override, and, we'll have to cut out of our departments, and that'll be out of every department, to, move over to help the schools. So obviously, we won't be able to move the full 3.5 or 3.3, whatever $1 million over, but, we'll have to do some to, offset the, their budgetary deficits. One of the things that probably came up during public comment, we did get the first round of sandbags were delivered and installed, and special thanks to the DPW and Director Calla for getting that done. We do expect the second delivery next week. We just had to order them and get them here, and then that will wrap it up with all the plans we talked about with the homeowners and getting the rest of the bags in. One of the things that is gonna come up in the next month and a half or so is the ADU, accessory dwelling units. I know we've received some emails on it, the council has. Attorney Cipolletta has been, for the last month or so, been working on, coming up with an accessory dwelling unit ordinance. We'll have that in front of the council. I did talk to the planning board chair about when they could have a hearing on it, and then, get in front of the council for discussion and comments and additions, subtractions. There's an open comment period with the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. Attorney Cipolletta and I addressing concerns that we see in it and sending it out. Certainly, if any of the council members have concerns with it, they can get those to us, and we can submit those up to the state as well. Whether or not that'll change much, I don't know, but at least we wanna get them on record, and then we can, go from there. And with that, we did have our annual wrap-up meeting with Meyer, our insurance company. They come in and update us and kind of anticipate what we may or may not see for increases next year. They said, they anticipate, our property and casualty and our workman's comp anywhere between 5 to 7%, so we'll go on the conservative side and plan on a 7% increase, and then we'll see where that comes in, so. Other than that, that's where we're at. I'm certainly open to answer any questions.
Councilors.
One other thing, and Denise will kill me if I don't bring it up. We did a big shred day here, which meant we had a ton of extra boxes. So if anybody in the community needs boxes, the nicer banker boxes, we're gonna break those down and reuse them. But if anybody needs cardboard boxes, they're moving or wanna organize stuff in their house, we have a ton out in the hallway here, so feel free to come by and grab them.
Appreciate it.
Councilor Swope.
Three things. One, I just found out in terms of my own insurance, that I live in a condo, that indeed, that it's not in a floodplain. However, if indeed that building were to get flooded, my own personal insurance on my property values would no longer is null and void. So I urge all of you to call your insurance companies, find out what it is that you're covered for, and even if you're not in a floodplain, to make sure you understand what the insurance company will cover. I was shocked, so now I added $310 to my insurance, so I don't have to pay for it. Okay, that's one. Number two, the accessory dwelling units, I think, I'm so glad you brought this up, because we have until December 10th, January.
It goes into effect February, but the executive.
No, I mean, when are our comments due?
Friday, yes,
Yeah,
sorry.
so
No, I thought you were talking about
it is,
when
it's imperative, I think,
Yep.
that we say something about this, so I will try to
Yeah, get whatever you want.
draft something, but
submit to the
all of you too, think about this, because the ADUs are as difficult as 3As. Number three, whatever happened, did the exemption go to court? The 3A exemption, that was the, do you know anything about that?
Oh, yeah, actually, sorry, I meant to mention that.
Okay,
I don't know if you want me to read it, Ms. Constable, but we got a notice today of the voluntary dismissal. The Winthrop says no to 3A and Diana Viennes versus Town of Winthrop and James Cipolletta. Want me to read it?
Please.
It was filed in court today. Pursuant to Mass Civil P 41A 1 lowercase I, plaintiffs Winthrop says no to 3A committee and Diana Vian's voluntary dismiss with prejudice the amended complaint filed in this case. After further investigation and communication with the town of Winthrop, the plaintiffs withdraw all concerns they expressed in the amended complaint concerning town council James Cipoletta, and acknowledge that the town council Cipoletta's extensive knowledge and expertise on municipal law and his professionalism were central to the resolution on this matter, which is now moot. Additionally, plaintiffs have withdrawn their second initiative petition submitted to the town of Winthrop on July 23rd, 2024, which is referenced in the amended complaint. The town of Winthrop, in turn, has acknowledged the value and significance of its residents' spirited participation and voice in matters of public concern, such as the issues raised in the amended complaint. So that and the second petitioner withdrew, so we don't need to hold the election now.
Thank you.
But, yeah, actually, my point was about the exemption that was filed. In other words, being exempt from 3A.
Oh, I don't know about that. This was about the lawsuit against us.
Yeah, I know, but I was talking about the exemption, so you don't know.
I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Tessner.
One more follow-up question on the engineering for the Towson, Girdleston and Morton and Pico. Where do we stand with that? What do we?
Director Cal, I'll jump in on that. We did talk about that today. My understanding is the second round of work, it's just been completed. We did go back to Woodard and Kern and ask them to break it down, but at this point, they're getting to the point where it's, they sort of need to just move forward with the full, $300,000 or $400,000 that's remaining. There's no really way to break it out. They're looking to see if they can, so Steve, did I miss anything, or you want to add anything to
I
that?
actually did I had a follow-up conversation with Woodard and Curran later this afternoon. I didn't get a
There we go.
chance, Tony,
All right.
to update you on that conversation.
Yeah.
So, to date, all the survey work is done. Then we entered into we got an engineering design quote. That was 4 phases. So the first phase was the conceptual design and base plans. As Tony mentioned, that's complete. Phases 2 through 4 would cost $317,000 to complete the engineering for that. Clearly, the funding's not available for that. So Woodard and Curran feels that at a minimum, we should get through phase 2. Phase 2 will cost $156,000. That gets us to the point where we can start applying for the permitting, which is gonna be a long and extensive process. So if there's any way to get to that $156,000 mark, that would be the recommendation at this point to keep things progressing. In addition to that, down in the Pico area, with the base plan and conceptual design work, the need for a seawall has been identified as a necessity for any of the drainage work to work. So we've asked Woodard and Curran to give us a supplemental engineering and permitting quote to include the seawall along Francis Street from Pico Park to Sunnyside as part of this process.
That's not any of the quotes you just mentioned though, right?
That's not in the prior.
That's not in the
engineering.
156, that's not in the 3.
No, that would
17.
be a supplemental design quote. Yep.
All right. we
Anytime
did-
you can get that information would be helpful.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
He's working on it.
And we did make a commitment, and we will have something on an agenda to try to facilitate that.
Thank you,
Counselor-
Mr. President.
Vice President Belcher.
Thank you. 2 questions. We know Ural Beach is under the ACO now. What are the next steps from the town side?
We're waiting, I actually got a call with Dwight Dung, our consultant, tomorrow. We're trying to get the sieve analysis completed, so I'm just waiting for pricing on that to find out, so they can go out and test the sand and see what size sand we need, for the dune.
Okay.
And then once we get that, then Director Cal and I talked about, we gotta price the sand, and then we're gonna, see how much money we can find, and then see how far we can get along next spring when we plant the wall. If we can't plant it, we're not just gonna throw sand out there, we're gonna put out enough sand that we can plant in the spring, so we know it'll take over the summer and the fall, and, have a chance of holding up, and then we'll go as far as we can, so.
Okay,
Hopefully we get the whole thing done, but, it'll depend on pricing and, ways that we can find the funds, so.
sure. I'd like to have a community meeting about this at some point, so it seems like that's still a little premature.
Yeah, we wanna get the sieve analysis and then get some pricing so we can let everybody know what the plan is.
Okay, that would be great. And then just another question, we talked about the Somerset walkway and our public ways in general. What do we need to do as a council to move forward with maintenance and updates for that? I don't know if that's a question for you or for
We'll
Director.
talk about that in the capital plan when we get to the
Okay.
budgeting process. We're also looking at, there's a shared streets grant, that application that's due on the 13th. We're gonna put in for one of the walkways between, I think, Summit and Crestview, is that what we talked about?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we're gonna come up with some pricing for that and see if we can get some grant monies for that.
Yeah, that one, I just don't want that to fall off the radar because we did
Absolutely,
make
no,
a
it's-
commitment
it's
to
on
keep
high on our
it
priority list.
safe.
Thank you.
And-
Council
oh,
Mon-
sorry.
uh,
Just one more thing. Counselor DeRoss had asked me to bring up did the climate committee had their master plan thing that they would like you to take a look at and fill in? They have a meeting next week.
I responded to his email,
Okay.
and it's up on my screen to fill in the blanks.
Awesome, thank you.
Council Munson.
Yes, a few points. On the union contract, is that a 3-year agreement?
With the fire?
Yeah,
Yeah. And the ones we're starting now,
With the
all the
police?
rest are expiring June 30th, 2025. So we're working, I've actually got the first meeting with the library union tomorrow, and we got the 2 police unions scheduled for next week, so we're starting the process.
so
with the
those are
remaining
almost always 3 or 5-year terms?
3 years.
3-year terms, and that's consistent, no longer ones
Yeah,
are
no, yes,
available.
yeah, because the charter allows me to negotiate 3-year contracts, so.
You know, it seems unfair to me how the insurance can make a revision on our prices and yet we can't change our prices. Like, their costs are going up well beyond the 2.5, but yet we can't.
That's every year.
And it seems a little bit ridiculous. How are we supposed to make up for that? Anyway, I was curious about the ADU draft guidelines, because I did actually read, and if you could just clarify, isn't it true that we can apply for our town parking regulations for those ADUs, up to 1?
We can put, yeah, and that's what Attorney Sipla is working on. We'll have a meeting on that, but yeah, parking is a big part of what we're talking about, because,
Okay.
you know, you can also require the single-family homes to actually supply the parking for their single-family home before they add an ADU, and then they have to add additional spots, so that's all coming in, because the units themselves, it's the parking that's the bigger concern, so we want to address
Right,
that, and that's a
right.
big part of what we're putting into the regulations.
That would be my recommendation, if we don't speak again about this topic before the deadline, I would say that that has to be a mandatory. I mean, if I could, I would go backwards and make sure that the people that are, don't have mandatory parking for their homes also have it. I mean, but I just feel as though that's mandatory for these ADUs. I was gonna ask you something, Jim, if you don't mind, Council President. The format of the special meeting regarding the old middle school next Tuesday at 6 PM here at this room, what's the format? Is it round table, and what does that actually mean?
Not literally a round table, but
Yeah.
yes, it'll be a round table discussion, so there will be one item, one topic on the agenda. It will be a open discussion amongst the councilors, but it would be open to the public. No public comment, no, all the other items would be off.
So if there's a question
Just be
by
a
the,
single item agenda.
if there's a question by the public on a conversation the councilors are having, you're able to kind of open it up to them to make a comment?
No.
Or question?
It's just a council roundtable. It's just a discussion of the council. The council can't legally just meet and say, okay, let's just talk about this and try to hash this
Right.
out. It's gonna be in a public
So,
forum.
but it is public forum, and so public's
Public's
invited?
invited.
Right.
Yes.
But not.
And it will be on CAT as well.
Gotcha, okay. And then I do have a question regarding some of the quotes you made earlier, and if you don't mind, so the 156 for the Phase 2, that was for Tileston?
I don't think
That's
that's
in
what
Goldstone.
it's combined engineering.
Yeah.
Okay, that's for Tileston and Gross, and that works the underground all the way out to the ocean, so the water has somewhere to go. Increasing the space of the pipes, the volume of the pipes, and actually also making sure that the outward flow and the gates are all working. That's correct?
Conceptual design includes increased capacity, all new piping, increased volume. Flapper valves in all of our outfall pipes, strategizing where the outfall pipes should discharge to lessen the impact of the tides. Yeah.
So my question, I guess, is what does Phase 3 get us?
Phase 3 it's all part of the engineering process.
Okay, so 156 was Phase 2.
156 is phase 2. That gets us to a point where they have the information and that they need, that they can start applying for the permits. The permitting process, these other agents, Army Corps, CZM, the people that we're gonna have to be involved in this because it's along the coastline, are gonna need specific information. Phase 2 will get them the information that they need to accept a permit application.
Okay, so that was for Tileston. And then Pico,
That's all the same. That's what tile
It's
stands.
tile and girdle.
I know, I meant the Towson Girdlestone is one project. But Pico, you found that the seawall is needed between Sunnyside and the Pico at the end of
Pico
Winthrop,
Beach.
Oh,
Yeah.
Pico Beach.
Yeah.
So, but and you're asking for quotes from Woodward.
We're asking them to include that work in the scope of this process.
Okay. And then, but no numbers are present currently for,
They haven't given us that quote yet.
and Morton Street? That's a whole separate, different ball game. Do we have numbers and estimates on that?
We have an engineering estimate that they've provided, but, you know, there's no funding in place for that at the moment.
Where is that, and what phase does that get us to? Is it up to phase 2 or phase 3, the same as,
The Morton Street engineering quote is for the entirety of the engineering, to get us to the point where we're able to bid a project there.
okay. And
But
so,
to be clear, there's no phases on that yet, like
There's
we
no
applied
phase.
for.
Okay,
Right,
so-
that was to build the the backflow, the chambers to put the backflow preventers in. from
right, so the
erosion.
tide's in, the
Right,
water's not
exactly.
coming up and through into the streets. But is there a number on that?
There's a tentative number. I'm hesitant to give it out.
You don't have to
because
say it, yeah, I'm
I
just,
gotta make sure, you know, that it's all inclusive.
I see.
But I have been discussing it with Tony.
Max wants to jump in, but I'm not completely done.
I have a
No,
follow-up.
you can finish, please.
Yeah, if you don't mind. Woodward, what's the full name of the engineering company? Woodward and Curran. Woodard. They have been a big part of our water works and water repair for as long as I can remember, and they seem to do a great job when we ask them to do stuff. And they're doing important work right now, giving us quotes without having any dollars coming their way. So I appreciate that. But isn't this a huge job that requires more of a bidding process, or no?
Engineering is exempt.
Engineering.
Is that right? Wow.
The construction
I think there was only one other request by a constituent, and that was more of something completely separate in topic, and they were looking for an update from Massport regarding the noise reduction and why it's only 5 houses, and these are resoundproofing old houses despite the new sound guidelines. Is there any way we can get Massport to just come and talk?
We can. Vice President Belcher.
Thank you. Yeah, so they're re-soundproofing homes that were done before 1997. It's a project that the FAA reimburses Massport after the fact, so they're unfortunately slow rolling this project. I've asked them to come and make a presentation to the council, but they've been hesitant because they want to get it off the ground, but I will reach back out and push them again.
And this is the FDA that's involved. That's why it's not.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see.
It's
Whisper, we can't hear you. You're whispering up there.
said it's the FAA that's
It's
involved.
the FAA, not Massport.
Massport does have to pay the money up front, and then they're reimbursed by FAA, so this came about like kind of towards the end of COVID, but they had taken somewhat of a financial hit during COVID, so they used that as kind of an excuse. But they should have updated noise contours, and they have committed, or they have to commit, to re-soundproofing anything within the noise contours done before 1997, because the technology of the soundproof windows changed.
I see. I guess I'd like to just go on record as saying that I would love to have Massport here to talk to us. And then I would also like to go on record as saying, once we have all the firm numbers on the quotes for the engineering work for all 3 different projects, to have a big discussion during, which we'll anyway, or during the capital assets, plan, to discuss whether we need to move that forward and put that on the table and get this town to a place where the bigger pockets can help us get it done and protect these homes.
Councilor Tassinari?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would ask, Council President, continue to include the ADUs on the discussion, as a discussion point.
The
As we go
ADU
forward.
subject is gonna be incredibly important, and it's,
Yeah, okay.
it was mentioned
And-
earlier, it's comparable to 3A in effect, and writing an ordinance that's going to keep us safe and keep us in line with what we need, what we're trying to protect ourselves from, is gonna be incredibly important.
So we'll be able to have Attorney Cipoletta here to
Yes.
give us the full walkthrough. That would be great. And then, just to, continue the discussion from Councilor Munson on the engineering work, just wanna be clear about the Morton Street piece, that's just about the stormwater, that is not about
No
tide
berm.
elevation.
No
That's,
berm.
we're not talking about any of that stuff at this point in time.
That's correct. We're talking capacity and backflow prevention.
Right. So it's gonna relieve some of the issues there, but not the major issue of those storm tides coming basically right over.
I guess I disagree that the overflow is the major impact. I think the more frequent events are your tide coming back into your outfalls
Backflow,
and your
yeah.
high precipitation events. That's what we're seeing now. Don't get me wrong, there is overflow, and it's a major impact when there is. But the frequency of the three different problems you have there, it's the precipitation and the inflow from the tides that are more.
Much more common, much more
Much
frequent,
more
yep.
common, exactly.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Tony on his report? All right, seeing none. Old business. Vice President Belcher.
For the third time, the motion for the Rinks Extraordinary Mechanical Repairs, I will read the motion. It is from the town manager, and it reads, I move that the town council appropriate from retained earnings in the Rink Enterprise Fund the amount of $30,000 for extraordinary repairs and maintenance of the mechanical equipment, the ice rink, or take any other action thereto. The funds are coming from retained earnings that currently has a balance of $131,750,000. This motion is approved. It will have a balance of $101,750 for the repairs done to the rink ahead of the season to overhaul the main compressor, rebuild the secondary motor, and replace the glycol pump motor. This came out of committee with a positive recommendation.
Coming out of committee with a positive recommendation does not require a second. Any discussion on the motion? Councilor Munson.
Sorry to bother you on this, but I just want to know, it's a enterprise fund. Is this retained earnings their earnings?
Correct.
Yes.
Why are they asking us then? Why isn't that
When
ability?
it's over a
It has to
certain
go
dollar
over
amount,
it.
it has to come through.
Well, it seems like they, yeah, it's a no-brainer, absolutely.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, roll call, please.
Council Tassaneri?
Yes.
Council Costigan?
Yes.
Council Munson?
Yes.
Council DeMarco?
Yes.
Council Aiello? Council Swope?
Yes.
Council DeRoss? Vice President Belcher?
Yes.
President Lettieri?
Yes, motion is passed. New business, take these a little out of order because some of them could be grouped together. There are 4 motions that are going to be referred to finance. The first one is to authorize unpaid bills from a prior year, which is a regular item. Second one is a contract extension for town manager. Third one is MWA pilot contract. And the fourth one is a capital waste contract. So those will be referred to finance. Finance will have a probably extra long subcommittee meeting. It will come back to the council for discussion in a public setting, obviously, and votes. So those are all referred to finance. Every year, yes,
Can we go to finance and discuss any of these?
yes, absolutely.
Okay.
It's an open meeting. Okay. Every year, under the charter, there's an election of a vice president. It is done just in a democratic way from the council. I will ask for nominations. And depending on how many nominations, we will then have discussion, and then there will be a vote. Do I have any nominations for vice president? Councilor Munson.
Anna Belcher.
Hannah Belcher's name is put into nomination. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Second by Councilor Tassaneri. Hannah Belcher is in. Any other nominations? Seeing not, I will close nominations. We have one nominee. Vice President Belcher is up for re-election. Would you like to speak?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you for the vote of confidence.
Oh, we haven't voted yet.
Well, thank you. The role of vice president is an interesting one, and I have enjoyed being a point of contact for the council, and I look forward to serving, hopefully, in the next year. And to the council president, I am willing to do whatever you need me to do to make your job easier.
Thank you. Councilor Swope.
Hannah, and we talked a bit just briefly. What do you see as your responsibilities as in the role of the vice president? And by the way, they may be vague, but then, President Letterie, you can always.
Not getting any younger, is that what you're trying to say?
So the primary role is to step in if the president is unable to fulfill his duties. So that's the main point. I don't currently sit in on agenda things or anything like that, but I do keep in close contact with the president, and I hope to be available to everybody if they have questions that I can help answer. This is another point of contact for the counselors.
Anything else that she does?
She does a tremendous amount. She works extremely hard.
No, I mean, any other responsibilities specifically, I'm sorry.
No, no. I mean, the main responsibilities from the charter is to be able to step in. We have had one circumstance over the last 20 years where that did happen, where a vice president ended up stepping in and became president. That is the main responsibility of the vice president. But, you know, in years past, we've had vice presidents that have worked closely and got involved on more topics, and we do talk relatively frequently. So it's a help. I mean, it's a very big job that's entailed. No, just that's entailed, and help is always needed and appreciated.
Thank you.
Councilor DeMarco.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to Hannah's character. You know, not the job at hand, but just the fact that we've disagreed a lot. I know I've pushed your buttons a lot, but I appreciate you still being there for me, no matter what. We really are a team on the council, and we butt heads a lot. But we are a team at the end of the day. So I just want to say that, Hannah, thank you just for being you. So you have my vote 100%.
All right. Seeing no further discussion, roll call, please. This is a yes vote would be for Hannah to remain as vice president.
Counselor Tassinari?
Yes.
Counselor Gostigan?
Yes.
Counselor Munson?
Yes.
Counselor DeMarco?
Yes.
Counselor Aiello? Counselor Swope?
Yes.
Counselor DeRoss? Vice President Belcher?
Abstain.
President Letterie?
Yes. Congratulations. Okay. Town council subcommittees, similar to the vice president. The president will appoint members of the council to the 6 subcommittees we have. Those appointments will come in form of an email and will be posted on the website as soon as they're done. They will be done by the end of this week. Yes.
Question about, you know, there are some overlaps that I've noticed. I don't know if there's a time when we can have it.
No, we've discussed this 2 years ago, I believe, and I've said that frequently, that there was overlap. We have consolidated a couple, but there was definitely overlaps. That, I mean, there are committees that meet pretty regularly, and there are committees that meet incredibly infrequently. So that has to be a council decision. I can't suspend a committee, or I can not fill a committee, but I can't change a committee. It needs to be a council vote. If there is discussion or thoughts, that's definitely a motion that can be brought up. It's just a change to council rules. The council rules sets the committees, the standing committees, so if there is a thought or concern, please feel free, and,
Next meeting.
yep, well, anytime before the next meeting. Thank you. As we discussed a little bit, there will be a special town council roundtable meeting with a rectangularly shaped table. A week from tonight, January 14th, at 6 PM in the Harvey Hearing Room, and the one sole topic of conversation will be middle school discussion. And Firehouse Building Committee will be announced at our next scheduled meeting. If there is anyone that has interest in serving on the Firehouse Committee, please feel free to shoot me an email or go through the council clerk. I will ask also, there is a conflict in the first meeting in February. Our meetings in February are scheduled to be the 4th and the 18th. There is a unchangeable item that we need to reschedule the 4th for, so we can do one of two things. We can go to the 5th, have a Wednesday and keep the 18th, or we could just change the meetings from the 4th and the 18th to the 11th and the 25th. The other potential reason to do that is the 18th, I believe, is school vacation week, so there might be people away. So I would ask for, I guess that would be the easiest motion. I would ask for a motion to suspend council rules and to alter the February meeting schedule to the 11th and the 25th. There's a motion by Councilor DeMarco. There's a second by Councilor Munson. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Thank you. Meeting schedule. A couple of quick appointments, and then we'll get to override discussion. So I had, from a constituent, had been asked a while back to create a committee on affordable housing. I think that's an incredibly smart idea. And I'm going to name that committee now. This committee will be not a policy committee meeting, it will be an advisory committee, but I think it's incredibly important. I think there's opportunities that we have out there that will help us in the future, that will help us with development, and that will put us on the right track to keep Winthrop at some point, somehow affordable. So I would like to name that committee tonight. The committee would be, geez, getting old stinks. Cassie Whithouse, Kathleen Riley Capuccio, Scott Mahoney Wright, Councilor Vice President Hannah Belcher, Chairman of the Planning Board Chris Boyce or a representative, Chairman of the ZBA Darren Beard or a representative, and Town Manager Tony Marino or a representative. So that will be the Affordable Housing Committee. Try to get everybody sworn in. We will try to have schedule a meeting. I will ask Cassie, if possible, to chair that and to get a meeting scheduled, get a mission statement out, and then we can discuss steps going forward. But thank you very much, all of you, for asking and requesting this. Thank you to the constituent for bringing it to my attention. It's greatly appreciated, and I think this could be a very good committee for the town. So thank you for that. And I have one other appointment, a motion that the town council accept the appointment made by Council President Letterie to appoint Kim Whithouse to the Tree Committee with a term expiring June 30th, 2028, or take any other action relative thereto. A second by Council Vice President Belcher. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Thank you. Okay. And just to put it out there, we have one member needed for the Board of Appeal still, if somebody's interested, and also for the Tree Committee. The last item under new business is discussion, possible election date for school override and firehouse debt exclusion election. So I'll just go into a little detail. We could have a discussion. It's going to be continued until we get the question, which we will have at the next meeting. So at some point, hopefully at the next meeting, we're gonna have a vote circulated around a date. I've had many talks with our town clerk, turning her hat from council clerk to town clerk. We've gone through the state, trying to get questions answered to see what the time frame could possibly be. It looks like the earliest possible date to have an election, and I shouldn't say that, the best, the earliest, whatever you want to say, would be March 11th. That's a Tuesday. When there will be an election, whatever's on the ballot, the election will take place completely at the old middle school gym. So every precinct 1 through 6 will vote at the old middle school gym. We do have, as I stated earlier, a little more flexibility in a town election. The questions are still pretty stringent. The question can say what the question is, but there could be supplemental information as to a yes vote would do this, a no vote would do that, and that's what the school committee and the superintendent are working on now. So the time, and again, the timing is that the other things that are involved now is we would get a question. The question would be approved, my understanding for a town election from the town. We would get approval. We would then send that approval to the state for a super approval, a second approval, which 99% of the time will come back fine. Then we have to order ballots. We have to also inform residents of the possibility to do a mail-in vote. How we do that is up to the council?
To our office.
Up to your office.
Yep.
So the options for that are?
We can notify everybody, in the newspaper. We can notify everybody here, that if anybody wants an absentee ballot, just contact my office. It'll be at the meetings. We can notify
It'll
everybody.
be on the
with
town manager blog.
Town manager blog, social
Social
media.
media.
We can have a firehouse station, they can do the phone call.
Okay.
So there's plenty of ways we can notify everybody that you can vote by mail, but you do have to do an application prior to that. You have to request the application for the ballot to be sent.
Okay. And the questions that I'm asking people, if they want to discuss a little bit tonight, that's fine, is, the major question will be the date. And it looks like the earliest possible, which is kind of what we want. There are requirements for the school, and the superintendent has certain requirements in terms of notification of employees, in terms of pink slips and such. So there wants to be enough time for that. And it just behooves the town in trying to make a budget too. So we're looking for a relatively early date, so that would be potentially March 11th, could be the 18th, but the 11th seems to be able to work if we can get things going. And then the major thing would be what would be on the ballot. An average town election costs somewhere between about $18,000. In terms of the firehouse, a firehouse costs roughly, every year it's put off $1 million, so basically $100,000 a month. We were fortunate on this that without land acquisitions and such, which we saved $6 million, but again, it costs us a little more because it's a year, so we're actually saving $5 million. So there's a time constraint on that as well, and also in terms of the fact that it's been put off for 35 years. So there needs to be a discussion, there's comments as far as 2 elections versus 1, there's comments for both sides. I understand both comments. Does the schools go first and have 2? Does the firehouse go first and have 2? Do we just have 1 and respect that the voters can understand and that we do our jobs as officials and as committees to help people to understand the incredible need for both of these, the cost and the effects of the residents, because in the end, we're asking people to give us their hard-earned money to help us create a better environment for our children, to continue with the incredibly competitive education that we offer, to help us and help the firefighters that work in deplorable conditions is probably saying it nicely. The fact that, we have female firefighters now, and we don't even have proper facilities. We don't have contamination units, decontamination units. We don't have, a firefighter is supposed to shower within an hour after an event, and we have 1 shower and 9 people coming back from an event. So, but it's our job and to help facilitate this and get the word out, help people understand why the schools are asking for money, how they were able to go 15 years without an override, and how that was even possible. But to discuss the need, to discuss all the unfunded mandates that come so frequently, it's crazy, to discuss the importance of maintaining proper class sizes and proper staffing levels, proper professional development for our teachers. So we could start to have that discussion. I know Councilor DeMarco had his hand up first, so if you want to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to, for public record, I just wanted to be clear on the cost implications in terms of if there was 2 elections versus 1, how much more would it cost us?
Right, well, An election is about
18,000, right?
So a second
Yeah.
election would be 18,000.
So you kind of answered the question as you were going, but that's,
And I
that,
think it is obviously
Yeah.
one of the most important things is to let the public know what the cost would be for one, two, each question, and that has to be stressed as well. Vice President Belcher.
Thank you. At the last meeting, we committed to putting both of these things on a ballot in short order in the spring. And the more I think about it, the more I think it's appropriate to put them on one ballot and do it as soon as possible. These are both huge issues in the town. They're both priorities. We need both things, and our voters are educated enough to understand. And what I've heard from a number of people and counselors is that we can't be doing things in silos. So I think it behooves people to see in one place the asks, right? So we need the fire station, we need the school override. The school override's gonna be potentially the tiered question, so there's a little more room to educate on that as well. But I don't think it's right to pit these two constituencies against each other. And like Ms. Poulos made a comment earlier, it really isn't against each other. It's when do you take the money from the fire station, right? Like if the school passes, fire station doesn't, or vice versa, it's all the same pot of money. It's the same taxpayer funding. So I think that it saves money in just doing one election. I think it moves things along a lot quicker, especially for the fire station who's been waiting for years. It also gives a lot of room for a joint effort in educating people on why these are both super important to the town and why they're both important to vote for. It's a big ask. Both are big asks individually, but I think we owe it to our constituency to be clear about what we're asking for and what we need. So I am a proponent of one ballot and as soon as possible.
And I think, another thing in terms of the education is to help people to understand that they're two separate questions, right? One's asking for an override, and one's asking for a debt exclusion. And we understand it's a big ask, and we want people to understand why it is so important, but to also understand the implications and, if they were both to pass, it doesn't mean that starting in July, your taxes are gonna go up because both of them passed and we're gonna get money for both. A debt exclusion is totally different than an override. An override would hit the tax base July 1st. A debt exclusion wouldn't completely hit on the tax rolls for 2.5 years because a debt exclusion, we're borrowing money in smaller tranches over the course of the period of the building. So we're not gonna go out, if the firehouse is 35 million, we don't go out and borrow 35 million. We might borrow 500,000 to start engineering and this, that, and the other thing, and then the cost will escalate. And the important thing with a debt exclusion also is to understand what's coming off the books and when it comes off the books and the relative impact of that. So once the firehouse got on in 2.5 years completely, 2 years after that, Millerfield would be coming off, and that would be a 60% savings on the cost of the firehouse. And then subsequent years after that, the middle high school would come off, which would eliminate basically plus on the. So it's important to just give people all the facts, and then ultimately people have to vote their pocketbooks and vote their, what they think is important, but, I'm sorry, Councilor Munson?
If you guys were ahead, go first.
Oh, Councilor Tassinari, and then
Sure.
Councilor Costa.
I think we can all agree that both of these issues are extremely important to the town. They're extremely important to all of our everyday lives. They do belong on a ballot soon, but when we say as soon as possible, is that gonna give the committees enough time really to make their case? Personally, I know why I'm voting yes for both of these things. I want a quality education system for my own children, but also a quality education system is important when you talk about real estate values. When you go to resell your home, you're gonna wanna resell it with a great education system behind you, or else it's not gonna be what, you're not gonna get what you think you're gonna get for it. And then secondly, arguably more important, I want my first responders safe every day. So I'm gonna pay more for that. But I have the luxury of being able to say, I'm willing to pay more for that, and I can budget to pay more for that. I think we're underestimating the town, especially when we hear from constituents that say, we know what we voted for, and we voted against it because we don't either think we can afford it, or we don't think the money's gonna be used appropriately. I think that the committees, the respective committees, will need more time than March to make their case and to solidify their base and to make sure those folks get out and vote on the day that this election is held. I think that's like, it's an important thing for all these committees, both of these committees. The committee that we haven't even announced yet, the Firehouse Building Committee, one, and then the school committee, they're gonna need time to mobilize. They're gonna need time to campaign, and just educating people is not the same thing as campaigning. It's not gonna cut it. So, if we want these things to pass, we have to put in some work. It's gonna take a little bit more than a month and a half.
Councilor Costigan.
Yeah, I echo Councilor Tessanier here as it relates to the firehouse and, of course, the school override. You know, people are mentioning tonight that we have an educated public here. Frankly, the cost of everything in this town scares a lot of people. We have to educate them fully, and to your point, an override is different than a debt exclusion. So I think both committees, we have the Firehouse Committee and we also have the School Committee, and that whole group, who have to get out and, yes, educate the public. I'm sorry, you know, most voters are 10-second newsies. So we have to, and the committees especially, have to get out there and promote this, the importance of the school and the override in keeping our property values up, and let alone the town being judged by the school itself. Every time you go to any community, and I think somebody had mentioned that in some email I read today as it come by, it's everyone always asks, how's the school system? It's always number one, always number one. As far as the firefighters and the first responders, Winthrop has top-notch first responders, a good young group of guys, including you, Mr. Calandra Chief. Great people. And again, it's very important for people to know in this town that all these firefighters are well worth that debt exclusion, and it's well over time that we give it to them. So to echo Councilor Tessanier, I think a separate ballot for both, to really focus in on the importance of both these issues to the public, to get them out to the polls and really seriously say, we really need to take care of these two groups. And they are at the tip of the spear here as far as this town and the town's survival, educationally and first responder. We have a lot of issues in the town and could have a lot of issues as well as it relates to some of our neighbors. So again, I want the first top-notch fire station here in town as well. So again, I'm on board with Mr. Tessanier. Thank you.
Councilor Munson.
If I'm not mistaken, the school committee and Superintendent Lisa Howard mentioned that the timing is mission critical for that to get done for the school override as soon as possible, both for the teachers, parents, et cetera. So I don't think that there's, and I think that I'm not sure if I'm on the same page with the need for more time. I think that the bodies of, I don't know, I would defer to the groups that are actually doing the messaging. I guess some of the questions I have are, how does everyone know that there's going to be an election, a special election? What is the town doing with a seal on letterhead or on a, how are we actually getting the official communication to every single person that votes in this town? How are they getting informed? And how much information can we get them? I know that you said that we'll let them know on the town manager's blog and social media. That is that is not a mandatory thing. That's people that are actively pursuing that knowledge. Wouldn't it be nice if every single voter got that information, no questions asked, that this is the date, time, location, and this is the consequences of each? So if we're educating, wouldn't it be nice if the town educated on the basics? And that's I guess my big question is, how are the people even gonna know that we're having an election? And I would defer to the groups that are pushing for both on, I would imagine the school wants it done ASAP, no matter what. And I don't really know if if there's any good reason the fire doesn't want it that's on the same ballot as soon as possible. But I would defer to whatever they want in terms of education, but I guess I'm still looking for an answer. how can the town educate, how is the town gonna educate every voter? Is it gonna be on a bill? Is it gonna be a mail? Is it gonna be, the call, the automated call? I mean, do we even have access to every single person's phone number that they can actually receive a call saying there's gonna be an election? And so I guess that to me is there's a disparity between like, getting the information out to the people that are looking for it versus the people that actually should know it, which means every voter.
So, just a couple of things. In terms of timing, I think, earlier is best, and March 11th is 2+ months away. I think the fact that 9,000 people voted on a override and almost 6,000 people voted on a firehouse, they understand the issue. They just have to understand the nuances and the changes that, we listened to them on the firehouse, and we picked a different location, and we lowered the price by over 15%. And on the schools listen. They're offering a different, multiple choices, so to speak, for a dollar figure, because they understand that there is a concern for individual, the amount of money people can afford. So I think the fact that so many people just voted, to your point, in terms of how do we get people to understand there is a ballot, we can do what we had said. We could also put message boards up at the town. We could potentially, and this could alter a time, we could do as we did in a presidential election and send out a postcard, so to speak, to every registered voter. There's a cost involved in that of about, you're sending out 13,000 postcards at 45 cents a piece is about $7,000 or whatever it happens to be. So there's a cost involved in that, and there's a time factor involved with that, getting them printed, getting them sent, getting them received. And at that point, now you're asking for people if they want to request to vote by mail, so that's another request. So it could alter the time and push it towards, the first week in April or whatever. I do think, one of the advantages of being a relatively small town is, I'll tell you, if you do something wrong, it gets around this town in a quick manner. So I don't understand how an override wouldn't get around in a quick manner. So news does spread, but you can't count on just social media, because there are people that just don't use social media, don't have access to social media, or whatever, choose not to. So I think you want to educate the people. You want to get as many people as you can to understand the question. Because what I feel, my personal opinion, that we have, is we have facts. We could back it up. We can show the need. We're not making up a need. There is an incredible need on the schools. There will be impacts that I'm sure the superintendent will continue to pound on, and we're fortunate enough to have the chairperson of the school committee here, as well as another school committee member in the back. And I'm sure that they will be able to reinforce the absolute incredible need and the potential consequences of not getting some kind of help, financial help for the schools. And in the firehouse, we've done tours of the fire station. I really, every survey we've done, every person we've talked to seems to be that there's a true consensus that there is a need and a desire for a firehouse. It was just, the cost and the location was just prohibited and not liked. But we listened to that, and we came back, and I think, I hate to say sense of urgency, but the sense of urgency for a firehouse and the reason to not prolong it is the cost. It's an extra $100,000 basically a month that we're putting off. And the need for the school is just, to try to do proper budgeting for next year, to try to be respectful to the FTE, the full-time employees that we have in the school system, and the notice that we have to give the due respect to the superintendent, to try to create a budget. To basically now, the superintendent's gonna have to create 2 budgets over the next month. One budget if yes, one budget if no. And then the town manager's gonna have to make almost 2 budgets for the town too, and almost for every department. The potential effects on fire, DPW, council on aging, library, police. I mean, there will be, it's not a threat, it's not trying to throw it out there, that, it's just a fact. And I think that is, the onus is on us to get that information out, but I don't think 2 weeks or a month is gonna make that much difference on how much information gets out. It's a critical need, and it requires critical action and critical thinking.
Can I, before I
I'm
just,
one
sorry,
more. Councilor Mazza.
I know it's kind of a old school workaround, but what about just getting a town certified piece of information for both the school override and the debt exclusion on the firehouse, and actually have the prints made and have volunteers get it out to every single home?
There's a pricing,
No,
you
I
know,
mean,
there's-
mailed
there's
seems to be
only
the
certain-
problem.
There's certain items that we can put on, we could put a factual date. We can't put information as to this is what happened, or this is why you should vote one way or another, but we could put factual information out.
What
and
about
we
the
could send
questions
it out.
themselves that will be on the ballot?
I think you're saying that, I think we would be saying through that there will be an election for it. Yeah, I think the roundabout questions, the school will have a pyramid system where they are asking for either this or that. There's a
Tiered.
debt exclusion out for a fire station that would be at this location and this cost. And the biggest thing is, it's one thing to say, you know, it's a $4.9 million override, or a $3.5 million override, or a $35 million debt exclusion. The other thing is to explain what that actually means, because the majority of people don't understand. They understand there's a need, but people want to know, how is it going to affect them? What's the bottom line cost? So they have to understand that, you know, a $4.9 million override is roughly on the average house assessed in Winthrop, which is $689,000, it's roughly $970. $3.5 million override on the same $689,000 house is roughly $650 odd. $35 million debt exclusion on a firehouse, which would hit 2 years and into the future, would be roughly $430. So, I mean, I think that, those are the first things people want to know.
I just think we owe it to the people to
Oh,
get
we
the
absolutely
information
do. And
about
that's
the
on- that's an
election,
onus on us.
every single voter.
And that's why I committed to
I don't want
having
to
meetings
add
every
thousands of
single week from
dollars, but
now
I
until
really
whenever
think it's
election
important.
is.
You stop.
Councilor Swope.
Well, I would like to separate the ballots, and I might be wrong, but I'll stand on that one. I think we need March 11th for sure for the schools. I think we need it no later than May for the fire department. I think we have to have, this is very difficult. I mean, you think it's easy to understand, but the more you read about it, it's a little bit harder. So the schools need time just to educate on the schools, the fire department. I hosted a meeting for the fire department, which was the largest group that we had at Seal Harbor. I voted for a fire department, and I'll get Seal Harbor residents to try and vote for the fire department. It's not that. It's, can we actually do two things at once? And I'm not sure that it makes it clear what we're doing. I think it would be better if we laid out the actual vote on both issues. We put that in the transcript. We had as much discussion as we could. We talk about both of those, but we separate the vote. And I know it's expensive, and I'm not saying that, you know, I have all the answers. I'm just thinking about it from a marketing point of view. Thank you.
Councilor DeMarco.
I'm going to actually put the opposite end of the spectrum on that, Councilor Swope. In terms of cost, obviously, having one ballot, and I'm not saying I'm right either, because God knows I've been wrong a lot. But just the fact that I think having one ballot might actually turn out the vote. You might get more voters that would come out for one ballot, so that way you would get more of your constituents to actually come out and vote, as opposed to if you had two separate ballots, where you'd have one group that came out just for the schools and one group that just came out for the fire department. I'm not saying which is right or wrong. I'm just saying that there's two sides to that coin.
It's $1 difference
Yeah.
per person.
It is, and I do think that citizens of Winthrop are able to walk and chew gum at the same time and handle
Saying
multiple
enough, I'm
issues.
just saying we don't have enough time to get the information on it.
And, again, We hope that we are extremely confident that the school will have the subcommittee meeting this week, which is an open meeting, and they will discuss the questions they want. Those questions will be voted on at a special meeting next week with the school committee. The school committee will then bring those questions to us, and we will, I would assume more than likely agree with those decisions at our next council meeting. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Public comment? Did I get everything? Public comment.
Point of order. Did we discuss well, we moved around here in new business, so that's why I'm bringing up the point of order.
Yes, and I did say that at the beginning of new business.
Did we talk about the Mass Water Resource Pilot contract?
You referred to finance.
It was referred to finance.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Hi,
Celeste.
Celeste Berry, the precinct one. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year,
A few things
Celeste.
I want to hit on. My planning commission had on, I've got a question on the flood mitigation. When you talk about the engineering piece, was that just the financing for the engineering design that's been financed, and now we're looking to earmark funds to actually execute the work?
Just for the engineering work.
Okay. I know that in a previous CZM grant application, not the most recent one, which was declined, we partnered up with East Boston and Revere. I think that some resources were identified for that Morton Street area. Have those resources been applied to that design?
I don't know, I wasn't part of that.
Okay, all right, so I'll just check back with the commission, see if they can follow up on that. I think that we were really successful with that application because we partnered with East Boston and Revere, and they identified the benefit of us all kind of tackling it together. Our last application was not accepted, and I know that there was that follow-up conversation to understand how we could fine-tune it in the future. I think going back to the well, because there's gonna be lots of projects, as Councilor DeRoss and the rest of the commission are working on, coming up with a priority spreadsheet, which is being referred to Tony to fill in his pieces. I think it's gonna be beneficial for us to find opportunities for those partnerships, because especially if we're in a precarious position now with our 3 ACMs. So there's that. So that's my climate commission hat. On the CDICR commission hat, we are repopulated. We lost a couple of members. I'm a new appointee. And in our most recent meeting last month, we appointed a chairperson, and that is Aaron Williams. And the co-chair is Scott Mahoney Wright. We have a meeting tomorrow night. We meet every month. Our goal is to be super proactive, not just focus with the intensity on some of those hot button issues. So if anybody has some inclusivity items that you'd like us to pinpoint, please feel free to reach out to us. All of our contact information is online. All the commissioners are online. On the vote on the two issues, the school and the firehouse, I completely endorse doing one election for that, so that way nobody feels like there's a division and one issue is giving more weight than others, and voter fatigue doesn't set in and one gets overlooked. I do think we should look at optimum timing to make sure that campaigns can get executed, but I also think it's worth investing in a simple voter guide. Here are the questions, here's the details. If you vote yes, this is what happens. If you vote no, that's what happens, and I think it should be delivered to every home. People don't pick up the transcripts. A lot of people don't use social media, don't even use email, and my email box is overflowing. I miss a lot of things. And finally, I want to congratulate and publicly endorse Hannah Belcher. Congratulations on your appointment. Thank you for the work that you do. I know people are very cavalier and very open to sit behind their keyboards and criticize all of you for the work that you're doing. I think you're doing a fabulous job. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Kathleen.
Hi, Kathleen Capuccio, 49 Waldemar Ave. I'd like to note that at least as of a couple of hours ago, our firefighters are going on their 4th night of no heat in the Pauline Street Station. It was mentioned by a counselor earlier about the urgency for the fire station. We have beyond urgency.
What's going on?
This is a catastrophe. This is an outright failure for decades by the town of Winthrop, the government of Winthrop, elected officials, the residents of Winthrop, for our firefighters. And let's not get this skewed. I'm hearing people talk about, the conditions they're in. Our firefighters aren't looking for a spa. They're not looking for, catered meals. They're looking for a safe environment to work with a foundation that's not cracking. These men and women coming in using their own materials to upgrade these stations. We are beyond urgency. We're a catastrophe. Why OSHA, frankly, is not coming in is beyond me. Why our firefighters are not walking off the job. I want to say I don't understand, but I do understand. These men and women take these jobs for one reason. It's not the pay, especially in Winthrop. Maybe if they're working at Massport, that pays better. Most of the men and women on Winthrop Fire are working 2 jobs on top of their family jobs and everything else. So we're not at urgency levels, we're at catastrophe levels. We are at litigation levels. So people need to wake up. It's beyond me, honestly, and I'm sorry for my frustration, but I'm actually not. Enough is enough. Do something now, because you know what? We're gonna have lawsuits. We had lawsuits against our police department, which absolutely didn't need to happen. But the lawsuits that our firefighters should have against us should happen. With regard to the ADU draft regulations, I've reached out to this council, the planning board, Lydia Edwards, Representative Turco. The EOHLC closes the comment period on the draft guidelines on Friday. I asked for, I don't know, some type of meeting from someone to get Winthrop citizens' concerns. I heard from one counselor on this council. Lydia Edwards, never heard a word, no surprise there. Have we not learned enough from MBTA 3A regarding regs and guidelines to ignore this? The ADUs coming into Winthrop and other municipalities is gonna make 3A look like nothing. But again, back to our firefighters, enough is enough.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Dow.
Thank you, Mr. President. Jack Dow, Precinct 1. I don't think I said that the last time, Jim. You didn't correct me. I was waiting for it.
You did.
Munson has mentioned in the past that we should have an election when everybody goes to Florida. But he's changed his tune a little bit, but not a lot. I think the schools, and there used to be a law, a regulation that if you wanted to have a re-vote of something that didn't pass, that you had a certain number of days to have that vote. I'm not so sure, and I haven't heard about that from anybody here. So I'd rather see the schools take a vote as soon as possible, and by themselves, as soon as possible. And I think they have a good chance of winning there. I have 1 vote. As far as the firehouse, I have 1 vote, simply put. Whatever the board decides, I have 1 vote. So there's not gonna be any discussion from me about the firehouse. But getting back to Munson and his change of venue, so to speak. I'm wondering, how many of those sandbags were filled by Munson? Did you fill any sandbags, Munson?
Did you?
Excuse me, point of order.
Thank you.
I just want to make that point. No, he said it, he wanted to do it, I don't know if he did or not, he may have. The flooding, down on Morton Street, I don't think the town owes much to the people there, $12 million. I guess Wood Soul came up and they said, there's options, tear the building down, jack it up, et cetera. When you purchase a house near the water, you can expect water to be in your house, basically. So I'm not so sure, if we should spend, I think I heard a number of $12 million, or just the engineering was astronomical, but then to build a berm straight away. And so I think that problem down there should be addressed at a different time. Right now, we have firehouse and the schools to address. The issue with the schools should be taken up immediately, I think, and so we want to look into that, whether or not, there is a time frame for the vote, there used to be. I'm not sure if it's changed. And then the firehouse is a significant number. You know, you can break it down over 20 or 30 years, whatever you want to do, but it's still a significant amount of money. And all the people that, and I'm sure, you know, the education of people, my friend over here mentioned it early. I think everybody, there must have been a few educated people that voted to not have an override or a firehouse built on Winthrop Street. So the numbers are there, and I'm sure there's a few educated people that did vote during that time frame. So I would say schools first, separately, months later, take care of the issue with the firehouse. Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, I just want, Leslie Darcy, Precinct 6. I just want to say I appreciate the work that you do. We did submit a letter today with 250 signatures to support getting the school override on the ballot as quickly as possible. We need to get to yes on both. I think there's no question. And I think in the last meeting, you know, there was a commitment that we will keep going back for the firefighters and for the fire station. And that's the right commitment, in my opinion. And I think whether or not it's a cost savings to do it on one ballot, I mean, it is if they both pass, right? And if they don't both pass in the first go-round, we're gonna have to put it back on. And I think, you know, President Letterie, you said, you know, there's consensus on the need, and the question is the location. And the school really needs a decision. There's so much anxiety among parents, teachers. I mean, people are really scared. And so, you know, I strongly advocate to get the school measure on the ballot in March. And if the fire station's ready and we can get to yes, and people are confident that that's the right location, and we can get the votes on that, then that's great. And if you need a couple extra months to persuade people, then I would encourage the council to do it in 2 votes and, you know, pay the $18,000. It's just my opinion.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Schmidt.
Bill Schmidt, Precinct 5. Regarding the school and the fire station debt, excuse me, whether it's 2 ballots or 1, we're talking about spending $40 million.
35.
35, and then 5 for the school, so $40 million together. An extra $18,000 for a separate election, if people feel that's the best way to go, that's a small amount of money. To echo Councilor Munson and Celeste here, spending $10,000 even to make sure you get a really good mailing to every voter in the town, again, it's a small amount of money. So I think you should think about in terms of the investment to make, both in terms of time and dollars, to make sure people are informed, and I think that's the way to go.
Cassie.
Cassie Woodhouse, Precinct 6. I just want to echo what was just said. Investment is what we're talking about here. Investment in the future of our community, the future for our students who hopefully will grow up and have jobs and live here in the future, right? That's why we live here. We, you know, grew up somewhere else that was a small town feel, and it changed dramatically. And we felt really lucky when we found a place where we could live on the beach, have our kid ride around town and go to ice cream shops. I want our firefighters to have somewhere safe to work. I want the elders in our community to have senior services. If we don't fully invest and create a budget that can fund everything this community needs to thrive, someone is going to come up on the short end of the stick, and we're at the leisure of the council as to who ends up truly coming up short. So I urge you to invest the time now and really advocate for these things to pass so that our budget doesn't come up as the thing that ends up short in one regard or another, and you guys are having to make the tough call of who gets shafted at the end of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott.
Scott Mahoney, Right, Precinct 3. We have to get this right, and if we put these things on the same ballot, we're not going to get it right. The firefighters have been waiting, what, maybe 30 years for a new station? The override hasn't happened for 15 years. These are 2 major critical issues for the town, and residents need to be educated and informed before they go vote, pure and simple. I've looked around at other communities across the Commonwealth that have had a fire station vote and a school override. They've all done them separately. They have not put one on the same ballot that I can find thus far. In all fairness to the fire department, to our firefighters, our teachers, the parents, and the kids, these need to be on a separate vote.
Anything on Zoom?
Shannon Poulos? Did you unmute?
I just want to address something that Councilman Munson had said earlier, and with all due respect, Councilman Munson, it seems like there's a hot potato going around here. The town council is actually in a position to lead the town. We should not be looking to the firefighters in the room or at the station. We should not be looking to the citizen, advisory committee that's, pushing Prop 2.5. It's actually your job. That's what you were elected to do, which is to educate the town on the priorities that are in front of us. And so that's your job. I feel like there's a confusion here as to like what the role of the town council is. We have town council president, we have town council, we have town manager. And it's actually the town council's job to help to set a strategic vision for this town. And again, we keep talking about like the firehouse and the school, like it's all one pool of money. And if we don't start to help educate the people in this town and make them really understand, we're just robbing Peter to pay Paul. But don't put that on the citizens of this town. That's on you. That is on this town council to do that. I'm really confused as to why there seems to be this hot potato or this lack of confusion and lack of clarity, lack of leadership, lack of accountability on the town council, which that is your job to do that. Please do it. Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Diana Vans?
Yeah, thank you, and I just want to piggyback on Diana Vance Precinct 2. I just want to piggyback on what Shannon just mentioned. Massive lack of accountability and leadership here. I dialed in after I heard that there was some confusion by our town manager, who we pay and is supposed to be managing our town and advocating for our town on matters like this on behalf of us. But there is massive confusion by him about our massively important exemption case, which exempts Winthrop from having to comply with 3A. If there's confusion about what that is all about, I would expect a phone call, since I am leading that effort. Since there was none, I'll go ahead and give an update here. We expect an answer to be filed by the Attorney General's office by MLK Day, so January 20th, thereabouts. That is their required timeline, after which we'll get a hearing date. It is hugely important for this town to get exempt from 3A for a multitude of reasons. We cannot afford or stomach or manage or anything related to 3A, all of the encumbrances that come along with that. With respect to the VP vote, I appreciate the friendship and camaraderie amongst folks, but that's really not what we need. We need leaders who will advocate for us, for example, with the MWRA contract renegotiation, or with the pollution being dumped on people's heads from the planes at Massport, or anything having to do with problems with our ability to get out of here, meaning if we increase congestion with something like 3A, which increases
Thank you. Any other comments? Anybody? Yes.
Todd Sackler, Precinct 2, what to say about these overrides? I guess, first of all, it's shocking to me that we just heard an announcement about the firefighters not having heat, and there's still a desire to separate these ballots and put the school first. We've had, how many schools? 3 schools, a football field. We've come to the school's aid every single time it's been needed. I understand, and with great respect to the superintendent, because your job is to conservatively estimate what you think your number's gonna be for next year. So she has to tell us that these are the possible outcomes. But what history has told us, and we can go back to when we thought we were gonna lose sports, we didn't. The scaring and the running around like the sky was falling, yes, it was a scary time, but we made it through. I actually, what her numbers, from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what the superintendent's numbers don't consider 100% are turnbacks, outside accounts. It underestimates the amount of money that the school is going to get from the town. Again, all the right things to do when you're trying to plan a budget conservatively. But we know through retirements, through history, we can look at this every single year and you will see outside accounts, retirements, all of these things have come into play, and it's never been quite as bad as we thought. All that being said, it is clear, to my friend Kathleen's point, the firefighters have to go first. I mean, there's just no question about it. The facilities are fine for the teachers. You know, these people are living in conditions that could actually harm them, or they're living and working in conditions that could harm them. The other part of this I want to address is this if you want people to respond to you, you need to tell them actually what it's all for. I've not heard one person mention that some of this money is for steps and lanes increases. I think if you're gonna ask the people who are paying you, who are hurting, in many cases hurting for money, you should tell them what it's for. There's also truth that the teachers, this is a truth, you're gonna be giving them a raise. If you don't get this, the reason there's such urgency and angst is because if we don't get the override, they're afraid the teachers will strike, which I find appalling since it's illegal. That's the information that should be going out there. Not that we could lose 20, 30 teachers, no. This is what it's for, and yes, we could lose 30 teachers because they're gonna quit or go somewhere else, whatever the case may be. Strike, whatever. But the reality should be put out there, not this fluff and platitudes. You really need to be specific with what the money's for. And you really should explain to people that if the teachers actually took a 0 this year, they'd still get, I think 90% of them will still get a pay increase because we have to give it to them contractually. And if they simply stopped paying their dues, which is illegal, and did us all a favor, stop paying your dues and be part of the community, you'd have a raise in your pocket instantly without any issues. So I'm tired of hearing about how we want to be one community when we're not acting like one. The schools need to jump on board. You've gotten them, you get the majority of the money every year, you've gotten the majority of the attention, it's time for the firefighters.
Any other? One online?
Caitlin Barrows?
Heather, I put my hand down.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you.
No, it's okay, thank you.
Nothing else? Anybody else? Okay, public relation, upcoming events, public skating Sundays at Larson Rink, 12:40 to 1:50, $3 cost. Renew your parking sticker and dog license online on the Winthrop, Town of Winthrop website. DPW will be providing pickup of Christmas trees on your trash days the week of January 6th and 13th. There's also International Students Night, which is held on the 16th. It's at the old middle school. It is an incredible event. It is packed every year. There'll be samples of food from over 25 different countries. It's just a fantastic event. I encourage people to attend, take your children. It's a great night out. With that, do I see a motion to adjourn?
There's another event.
Oh.
Can I just mention one more event?
Yep.
The health listening sessions are being held at 10:30 to 11:30 on Zoom on the 13th. and also 3:30 to 4:30 at the E.B. Newton School. This is an opportunity for you to talk about the health and safety of this community and any issues that you have. So please attend if you could.
Motion to adjourn. Motion by Counsel DeMarco, second by Vice President Belcher. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Meeting adjourned.